Knowing that you'll respect them in the morning with intelligent talk that stimulates.
Welcome back to our fourth segment. We call this our Picking Up the Pieces segment. Glad that you are with us. Top left, we've got Frank Vernuccio, and in the bottom middle, we've got Ben Brunson, and we're on our radio affiliates all across the country. A big shout out to them. You can hear this program on SoundCloud, and we want to thank you for visiting that at WBV Inside the News and on YouTube at WBV Inside the News. And we want to welcome on board, actually, we want to thank them for letting us come on board them, AUN TV. It's the AUN TV network, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. Okay, Ben, let's talk about the education, because we're starting to see the playing out of what happened with the Weather Underground and all in the 60s, and now there's a new push of the education and reaching the minds of the youth today, and we've got to do a better job of getting them back on task and knowing our Constitution and all that else is going on, Ben.
Well, education is where the conservative movement is failing rather dramatically. It has been taken over by the progressive movement. There's nothing more easily debunked and revealed for the evil it is than socialism. With just the slimmest bit of historical education, anywhere you look, you find socialism to be completely evil. Just current events in Venezuela shows how despicable socialism is. And yet, you have a remarkable percentage of young people in this country espousing socialism as the right path forward. The level of ignorance is just insane, and people point to Sweden or Norway as socialist models. Those are capitalist countries, every bit as capitalist as the United States, absolutely no different in terms of their capitalism, and yet people think they're socialist. So this is total ignorance, and it is critical that somehow we find a way to turn it around. Very importantly, the Supreme Court, and Justice Roberts was on the right side of this decision, just in recent hours has made a decision striking down Montana's ban on supporting, their constitutional ban on supporting parochial schools at the state level. A very important Supreme Court decision to put private education on more of an equal footing with public education.
You know, Frank, as we talk about, the election coming up and crime and all that else is going on, I personally would like to see Donald Trump get a little bit more involved with pushing for good education across the board to the young people and getting more push maybe on Betsy DeVos with education. What do you think about that, Frank?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Look, let's be blunt. The root of most of our current crises has to do with a dramatically diminished educational system. For 2 generations now, we've had students who practically from kindergarten through master's and PhD level have been taught by radical left professors. And I use the word taught rather advisedly. They've had propaganda shoved down their throats. When you saw in cities like Philadelphia and Boston, statues of abolitionists, statues of people who fought to end slavery, torn down by protesters, by rioters who simply didn't understand history, who had no idea who those figures were. In Philadelphia, a statue of Benjamin Franklin was defaced because he looked like an old white guy in weird clothing. The fact of the matter is, Benjamin Franklin started the first abolitionist movement in the United States. In Boston, a monument to the Massachusetts 54th, an all-black regiment in the Civil War that fought to end slavery, was defaced. The stupidity of the rioters. You can agree or disagree with one element of politics or another. You can be liberal, you can be conservative, but you can't fight stupid. And unfortunately, the politics in the United States is no longer right against left or Democrat against Republican. Frankly, it's the sane versus the idiot. And that's really hard to fight.
Ben, I'm going to give you about 45 seconds to talk about that, because when he said you can't fix stupid, you had a smile on your face.
Well, Frank summed it up perfectly. And unfortunately, the only hope I see to change this is to break the public school union stranglehold on the Democratic Party against the best interests of the constituents of the Democratic Party. If you want to improve, if you're an inner city mother or father caring about your child's education, you want them to have access to the same type of private school education that rich people in the suburbs can send their children to. And the only way to do that is to allow the dollars to follow children. And until we get there, I don't see this changing.
That was Ben Brunson, the author of the Falstaff Enigma and Esther Sling. You can find Ben at benbrunson.com, amazon.com. Frank Vernuccio with the American Analysis of News and Media. You can find Frank at usagovpolicy.com. And we're going to talk about our new association with the AUN TV network coming up. Some thoughts about July the 4th and hot button topics. You are watching us on the AUN TV network. We'll be back.
You're listening to Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Inside the News.